This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Endocanna Health.
What if you had such a clear understanding of your own DNA and genetic makeup that you could make informed decisions about what type of cannabis products interact best with your system? Well, now you can with EndoDNA. EndoDNA is a simple DNA test that maps your entire endocannabinoid system and then matches that summary with the specific cannabinoid ratio and terpene profile that aligns with your unique genotype. Imagine being armed with personal information when visiting a dispensary. You'll have the power and capability to purchase products that best align to your genotype. Visit their website to purchase the EndoDNA collection kit and Endo Decoded report at endodna.com/product and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. Again, that's endodna.com/product and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. The future of cannabinoid therapeutics is here with EndoDNA. Hello again, my fellow people of the plant. In this episode of Cannabinoid Connect, I'm talking with Dr. Tim Shu. He's the founder and chief executive officer at VETCBD. Dr. Shu is a licensed veterinarian, entrepreneur, and pet cannabis expert. He saw the need to positively impact the lives of pets of all shapes and sizes with effective plant-based therapies. Dr. Tim Shu developed his responsibly grown, meticulously tested line of CBD products for pets all over the world. In this episode, we discuss his background on hemp and cannabis therapy for pets. We talk about the stigma surrounding cannabis in the veterinary space, and he also gives an overview of VetCBD and VetCBD hemp, along with the company's goals and mission statement. Dr. Shu is super passionate about cannabinoid therapeutics for pets, and he does a great job of sharing his expertise and insights into this very niche specific topic within the overall cannabis industry. So I hope you enjoy as you watch or listen to this episode. Thanks. Dr. Tim Shu, how are you, sir?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on, Kevin.
Yes, thank you for making time for me in the audience today. As I mentioned, Dr. Shu, before we started recording, my wife and I have 3 dogs and very interested in this topic, CBD as it relates to the health and wellness of our pets. And I believe that you are the first veterinarian who is specifically focused in this space to come on the podcast. So really excited to be talking to you today.
And thanks for having me on. It's a really exciting aspect of medicine and really excited to talk about it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, me as well. So before we dive into that specific topic, let's first get a sense of your background. So for the audience, why don't you explain a little bit about your professional career and what brought you to becoming a veterinarian, but then also focused on wellness from the cannabinoid therapeutic side for pets and animals?
Sure. So I first became a veterinarian because for me, my background is originally computer science. That's what I did my bachelor's in. And for, I've always had a love of animals and nature in general. And medicine and wellness is problem solving, and there's an algorithmic approach to solving the problems of health and wellness. And so for me, it is a combination of the two and wanting to improve the lives of animals. So I became a veterinarian, practiced in general emergency, critical care medicine. And then the question that I always have is, what's next? How can we improve on the way that we're practicing medicine today? Because the way that we practice it today is not the same as it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And the way that we practice it tomorrow, moving forward into the future, whether it's 10 years from now or 50 years from now, is not going to be the same. But in order for it to change, we need to be able to push for that change. We need to be able to explore different therapeutics. And I saw that humans were able to benefit greatly from cannabinoid therapeutics. And so the question I had was, how can we apply this to animals? Is there a way for animals to be able to benefit from cannabinoid therapeutics? And what about the understanding of the endocannabinoid system? And it turns out that we know about the endocannabinoid system, but our knowledge of it is very preliminary. We've only known about it for about 30 years, and it's still not being taught in veterinary schools or medical schools. And so the current knowledge base amongst practitioners out there is hardly anything, if anything at all.
So that what's next mentality, right? And always kind of thinking about what we can do better, especially as it relates to medicine. Um, did you have experience with cannabinoid therapeutics? Did you consume yourself and have that understanding personally, or was this all kind of science-based learning that you kind of came upon along the way?
It was both. It was both. I've known about the therapeutic properties of cannabis for humans, but then I started looking at, well, anecdotal and observational data is one thing, but what kind of research is there that is either preclinical or clinical research that has been done to back up a lot of the claims that we see out there? Because we've seen a lot of claims in the news about cannabis or CBD being beneficial for this or that. But my question was, well, what does the science out there say? What kind of studies have been done to be able to back this up? And there's been a number of studies that have been done over the past few decades. And what we've seen is the evidence out there is quite remarkable. There are a number of therapeutic benefits for cannabis. And the unfortunate thing about this is that so many patients out there, so many humans and animals that could stand to benefit from cannabinoids aren't able to benefit because they don't have access to it, or because their doctors or their physicians don't feel comfortable talking to them about it and don't feel comfortable guiding them down that path. And so you have quite a number of people and animals out there that could be benefiting from cannabis, but aren't able to do so. And so they're suffering needlessly for it.
Mhm. From my understanding, a lot of the research studies that were released, during the early days of prohibition, were all kind of cited one way, and that was talking about the negative effects of cannabis, right? And some of them are true, some of them played out to be true, some of them were just complete false. When you say that it was remarkable to come across this research now, is it that it's more overwhelming in terms of like the pros really outweigh the cons now, or what do you mean by remarkable?
Well, to clarify, when the Nixon administration was looking at being very anti-cannabis, they formed a commission to study cannabis, and that commission came back and said there's no reason why this should be Schedule 1. They said, well, who cares? We're going to make it Schedule 1 anyways. And so from a scientific perspective, the scientific community and the medical community has always said that there's potential here, that there's benefits here. And it's not just within the recent era too. If you go back thousands of years, there are ancient manuscripts from cultures around the world, whether it's the ancient Chinese, ancient Egyptians, that have documented medical benefits of cannabis. So the period of prohibition is actually a very small amount of, is a very short time frame with our relationship with cannabis, which goes back thousands of years.
No, and I've had Dr. Janelle Kim on, who's echoed what you said, like, in thousands of years ago in ancient Chinese medicine, that the cannabis plant was basically, and I'm going to butcher the actual title, but it was listed as one of their like kind of core herbs, right? Core herbal remedies and medicines, and used for different things. So it's been around for quite a while, and especially within Eastern medicine, they've been practicing it. And it seems like we've just kind of pushed the pause button the last 100 years of prohibition, which has halted, of course, growth and learning and understanding of the efficacy of it.
Right. So if you go back to the name for cannabis in Chinese, it actually means anesthetic. And so, the medicinal aspects of cannabis have been documented by civilizations around the world for a very long time. It's just within this past 100 years that we've been dealing with prohibition, and this has greatly set us back as a medical community, but also it has set back our civilization or our society as a whole, because again, there's a lot of therapeutic potential behind the cannabis plant, and even more so is our understanding of the endocannabinoid system, because there remains a lot more to be unlocked about the endocannabinoid system, and our understanding of it will create a better understanding of the impact of the endocannabinoid system and its role in health, wellness, and disease.
And you mentioned the endocannabinoid system, right? I mean, that's something that we've discovered in the early to mid 90s, I guess. And it's basically homeostasis for our bodies, right? So does that translate to pets? Like, do pets have ECSs?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we know is that all vertebrate animals have an endocannabinoid system. So vertebrate meaning animals that have a backbone. So that's mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and even some invertebrate animals do too. So, they found, tiny water creatures also have an endocannabinoid system, like the hydra, which is this tiny, tiny little water creature. And so what that means is, because these animals have an endocannabinoid system, they have the potential to benefit from cannabinoid therapeutics. And also the endocannabinoid system plays some role in health and wellness in those animals as well.
Wow, that's incredible. So is that part of your discovery as a veterinarian, and you were thinking like, what's more, what can I do differently? And so you just kind of came across, and just what was the first step in like where you are today?
Well, there's really three things. So what we call the acronym ERA, so ERA, because our mission, our goal as a company is to usher in a new era of cannabinoid therapeutics and integrate that with veterinary medicine. So for us, that ERA stands for education, research, and advocacy. Those are the three cornerstones of what we do. And the education component is such a large piece, because when I talk to recent graduates, whether it's from veterinary school, medical school, I talk to registered nurses, nurse practitioners, and I ask them, how much about the endocannabinoid system did you learn in school? And the answer is always zero, nothing at all. And to me, we're doing a huge disservice to not just the medical community, but to the patients as well. Because this is the same thing as saying, we don't teach the endocrine system in school. The endocrine system is the body system that creates and regulates your hormones. This is the same thing. If you said that, we're not going to teach the endocrine system, we don't need to know anything about it, we would think that's absolutely crazy. But
Do
that's
you,
where we're at with the endocannabinoid system.
do you think the ECS has been dismissed in the curriculum within the healthcare education system because of cannabis?
Absolutely. There's a tie to cannabis. And so because of the stigma of cannabis, it's largely ignored. And that's quite the travesty. We're doing ourselves a disservice.
Do we have, I mean, there's time though, right? I mean, we're starting to see more public support. I mean, both medicinally, recreationally throughout the country. I mean, it's the one issue that Americans agree upon, the only issue I think that Americans agree upon at this time. So like, it seems like, and then of course, big pharma is already preparing for this big wave to come. So are we going to get to a point where we can really start dialing in when it comes to cannabinoid therapeutics for both humans and pets and animals?
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely inevitable, because from a medical standpoint, the endocannabinoid system is deeply integrated with all other body systems. So whether it's the nervous system, the circulatory system, the digestive tract, we know that the endocannabinoid system is involved in all those other systems. And the reason why we know that is because cannabinoid receptors are found all throughout the body. Whether it's the brain, the GI tract, it's found throughout the body, and it plays some role in the function of those other systems. The extent of which we're not quite sure yet. That's part of the learning process.
I hear a dog. I think that it's time. Is it time for a CBD? I don't know what.
Yeah, sorry, one of them is dreaming.
Oh, no problem. So, like, speaking of that, like, is there any stigma specifically around the veterinary community when it relates to, utilizing cannabis therapy for pets?
Yeah, absolutely. And the part of that stems from the fact that cannabinoids and cannabis is not taught as a potential therapeutic. It's taught as a potential toxin. And so, just to give you an example, when I was going through school, the only time that cannabis was ever mentioned was in toxicology course. And essentially, it was what happens if animals get into too much THC. And there was no mention of the endocannabinoid system, even though the endocannabinoid system, like you said, was first discovered in the late 80s, early 90s. So we really need to be able to step it up and to be able to say, hey, this should be part of the core curriculum of any medical profession, and it really shouldn't be stigmatized because it has a great impact on our patients' health and wellness.
Right. Let's dive into the actual application and utilization of cannabinoid therapeutics for pets. So like from my understanding, even for humans, CBD, you need to be continually taking it and building your body up with CBD so that you start to feel the effects. Is that correct?
No, not necessarily. It just depends on what it's being used for. If it's being used for ongoing conditions, then it needs to be used continuously. Now, if it's used for something like trying to provide calmness with from environmental stressors, if you're trying to reduce nausea, then that can be one-time use. The timing of it's important. It tends to you tend to need to utilize it. About 30 to 60 minutes before whatever you're dealing with, whether it's environmental stressors or nausea. But for ongoing conditions, then it's given typically twice a day. But it also depends on the individual. Depends on the individual's metabolism. Sometimes it can be once a day. Sometimes it can be even 3 or 4 times a day.
And I would imagine that that same ideology applies to pets as well, then, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, there's been times my one dog, Toby, I mean, like most dogs, gets freaked out when he hears rain and thunder. And I don't regularly give him CBD. And I have good high quality products, that are for pets. I'd have, of course, have to try yours. We're gonna get to vet CBD in a minute, but when I give it to him, he still is freaked out, and I've even like upped the dosage. So but again, he is super anxiety and stressed out. Like he gets really bad. So maybe I don't know, maybe I just need to start giving it to him more to build his system up, or find another product. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, there's a number of factors here. For hemp products are not under any sort of regulations to undergo testing for the final product. And studies in the past have shown that there is a significant percentage of hemp products out there that do not actually contain the amount of CBD that they claim to on the label. In some cases,
Right.
it's actually zero.
Right, none, right? Yeah.
Right. And so testing is a huge component of that. I've talked to people that have said that they have tried CBD and they didn't see any results from it. And I asked them a little bit more about it. And it turns out that they tried a hemp product, but it did not contain any CBD. It was made with hemp seed oil. And because it's made with hemp seed oil, it can still be called a hemp product. And so there's that education component again that a lot of consumers don't realize, that just because it has hemp on the label does not necessarily mean that it actually contains any cannabinoids.
Got you. I mean, and there's like red flags that you can look out for, right? I mean, like if the company doesn't have COAs that are like accessible on the website, or if they don't have any at all, I mean, could be another red flag that they're not even willing to show those reports.
Right. So every single batch of products should be tested and have a COA that accompanies it. And really, it should be more than just the potency. Every single batch that we produce gets tested for potency, pesticides, solvents, heavy metals, bacteria, and mycotoxins. And that's the way that it should be done if you want to use a clean, consistent quality product. The other thing I'll also say is that not everything is going to work 100% of the time for 100% of the users out there, right? So for some, CBD may be very calming for things like noise and fireworks. It may not work as well for others. The other thing is that we also have to examine whether there's other factors in the environment. So what I always recommend people do is not just talk to their veterinarian, but people don't realize that there's also veterinary specialists out there too. So there's actually veterinary behaviorists out there as well that can be very beneficial in situations like this. You can think of them as veterinary psychologists.
I didn't realize that they were out there. Wow, there's a lot of resources available. I guess you just gotta look and find them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I have a question that came from Twitter from Matthew O'Brien, big cannabis influencer, advocate, owner of 4PM. And he wanted to ask you, can you see cannabinoids being introduced into livestock supply chains? If so, what's the timeline on this, and what hurdles would we need to clear before this could happen? Shout out to Matthew O'Brien.
It's a possibility. It's a possibility just because livestock do use other medications, but there are withdrawal times. So for example, what happens is, if livestock are administered medications like antibiotics, what they want to make sure of is that those antibiotics don't end up in the food supply chain. So that, if an animal is being administered a medication and then ends up being part of the food supply chain, that medication doesn't go along with the food product. And I don't see why cannabinoids don't have a future in that regard, but there are some things that will need to be studied a little bit more closely, such as how long it takes for it to be out of the system.
So you could see it happening, but in terms of like timeline, too hard to tell, and the hurdles that they may encounter. I guess you kind of touched on the hurdles, but timeline wise.
Yeah, it's I can't make any predictions there. But as a vegetarian, I will say that there is also a future for lab cultured meat. Meat that's cultured from stem cells without any sort of live animal having to be a part of that process. And so that's really exciting, and that's something else to look forward to.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I love red meat, and I understand what goes on, like the implications of us over butchering and overgrazing with, in terms of our climate and whatnot. But the lab, I don't know. It's just something that's people, need time for change. So it's just something that I would just need to try and figure out for myself. I mean, are they already doing that and selling it, or is it still in like the testing phase?
I think that there are some companies that have started to produce some products out there. I remember seeing some news articles about. I think right now it's just kind of like meatball stages. It's not like a steak, but there are some companies that I think they do have products that they are selling on the market now.
Right. Well, I would try it. I'm not one to knock on anything before trying it. So yeah, sign me up whenever it happens. So hey, Dr. Tim Shu, let's dive into VETCBD. Tell us about the company, your goals, your missions, and I believe there's two. You have VETCBD and VETCBD hemp, right?
Right. Yeah, so for us, it's really about where do we see the future of cannabinoid therapeutics, and how do we integrate that with veterinary medicine, and how do we provide the education and resources that both the clients need to know to be able to better understand this, and what the veterinarians and the medical professionals need to know from their end to be able to speak confidently to clients about. The other component is research. The industry right now is still very, very early stages. Everything is really a startup at this phase. And
Are you talking in generalities like hemp and cannabis overall, or like specifically the niche of hemp and cannabis for pets?
overall, the entire industry
Overall.
is
Yeah.
is completely new.
Would you say that it's even more so for the pet segment of the industry?
Yeah, absolutely, because it certainly gets less attention. And, there's, everybody knows about cannabis and it being used in humans, but fewer people realize and understand that it can also apply and benefit animals as well.
Got you. Okay, I didn't mean to cut you off. So go ahead, continue if you were going with your thought.
Oh, I was just going to say that the research component is a big aspect of what we do, because the two main cannabinoids that we all know about is THC and CBD, but those are just two out of potentially 140 plus different cannabinoids out there. And all the other cannabinoids we barely know anything about. And what's fascinating about this industry is that the market moves faster than the research. So right now, you could purchase something that has CBC, CBN, CBG in it, but in terms of the clinical studies and the medical data behind the use of those cannabinoids, there's hardly anything out there. There's a lot of claims out there, but it's not really being backed up by any scientific studies, because the researchers that are very interested in studying this plant and cannabinoids, it's tough for them to do so. They face a lot of potential backlash, and they face a lot of hurdles and a lot of red tape to be able to study these cannabinoids, which is unfortunate. But on the other side, we are starting to see that change. And we ourselves, we do research these other cannabinoids. And, I'm very hopeful that in the near future, we will see a lot more clinical studies being published that look at these different cannabinoids and help us better understand their uses and potential benefits.
Yeah, I mean, when that happens, that's just the potential of opening up Pandora's box, as for basically the future of medicine. We can, as start to dial in what cannabinoid is best for what ailment, where is your body chemistry lacking in certain areas that these cannabinoids can address. And that's what's very exciting. And it's amazing that y'all are really diving into the research specifically on the pet side, to explore that. And like you said, there's over 140, I've heard up to 150, 170. No one really knows the number, right? But there's so many more cannabinoids that we haven't even scratched the surface with. So time will tell, definitely, on that. And I understand that you guys have a partnership with Best Friends Animal Society. Do you want to talk a little bit about that partnership and what y'all are doing with that?
Yeah, so amazing organization based out of Utah. And one of their primary goals is to make the US a no-kill country by 2025. So we work with them to study the potential impact of CBD on shelter animals to be able to decrease their stress and hopefully
That's
decrease.
awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing because, one of the things about shelter animals is that they're very stressed out, and when they're stressed out, they're more susceptible to disease because their immune system gets suppressed. And when they're stressed out, it's harder for them to be adopted because it's hard to really connect with an animal when they're in a stressed out situation.
Sure.
So for us, we want to be able to look at the potential impact of CBD on these animals to see if we can decrease their stress and to help them not be so susceptible to disease, and also to be able to increase their adoption rates.
That is amazing. Really. I mean, one of my wife's dreams is to just open up a rescue where she's got tons of land and dogs are roaming free. But I mean, the reality is a lot of these shelters aren't like that. They're not open ranges. These dogs are on top of each other. They're stressed out, like you said, and it's hard to adopt them because they're just their behavior is not what an owner would want. Right. And so they often get left behind. And the fact that, man, that could be a real game changer. CBD, cannabinoid therapeutics for those particular dogs could totally be a game changer. That's exciting.
Right, exactly. And it's, shelters exist around the world, and this has the potential to really improve these animals' condition and help them find forever homes.
Right. Exactly. Wow. I look forward to learning more and seeing more about how that progresses. As we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, I know that y'all launched some kind of scholarship opportunity that combines cannabis and veterinary medicine. Do you want to talk a little bit about that scholarship?
Yeah, so this is one of the most exciting things that we've done. And what we're doing is we have a scholarship that we're going to be awarding twice a year. And the scholarship is going to go to veterinary students, veterinary technician students, and current registered veterinary technicians. And what's so important about this scholarship is that it's a way for us to not just give back to the community, but also to reinvest in its future, and to be able to do that from a plant that has been traditionally stigmatized. So, like I said, when I was going through school, and growing up in Texas, there was never anything good that was said about cannabis. There are a lot of negative things were said about cannabis, but we want to change that, and we are starting to see that change. And we want to be able to invest in the future of veterinary medicine through the veterinarians and through the registered veterinary technicians and nurses, and to be able to lift them up and provide a better future for them, so that they in turn are able to provide better future for these animals.
That's great. That really is a great initiative. And I feel you on the Texas thing. I'm based in Dallas, and yeah, I think, it's we got a ways to go here, but I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Dr. Tim Shu, this was a pleasure. I really appreciate your time, your insights, and just, opening up the world of cannabinoid therapy, cannabis therapeutics for pets and animals. I mean, I think there's a huge opportunity there. And obviously, VETCBD hemp is blazing the trails in that space. So continue the great work, and love to have you back on as things evolve.
Yeah, sounds good. Happy to do it. And thanks for having me on today, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Where can people find y'all's website and social media if you want to learn more?
Yeah, go to vetcbdhemp.com, and then our socials are the same, vetcbdhemp.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dr. Tim Shu, and thank you all for listening.
Thanks,
Bye.
Kevin. Bye, everyone.